Greetings! So in today's video, I will be taking a look at this set of coloring pencils. This is a box of 126 colors made by Arrtx. These are artist quality, saturated colors, and they say that they feature a soft core that is 3.88 millimeters wide, I think. They also say that each pencil is 6.7 grams. Now, I'm not all that familiar, so I don't know if that's information that coloring pencils aficionado really use. It's interesting, so there's that. They very kindly sent this box to me so that I could try them out. I'm somewhat familiar with coloring pencils in the sense that they've always been part of my life. Ever since you're a kid, you always have a box of coloring pencils, in the vicinity. But every time I've tried to give them a try as a professional or as an adult artist, there has always been some point in the process where I get frustrated and I put them aside. For me, it's mostly about the amount of dust that they produce while you use them and also how smudgy they get. So those are two things that I will be paying extra attention to while I'm trying these out. So when you open this box, you can see that the whole set is split into two boxes. You gotta be careful when handling the box because if you only grab under the box by one of the sections, the other one is gonna fall down and that's not good. So be mindful of that. That's the only thing. I'm not saying that because I almost dropped it a couple of times. No. It's a good idea to split the box in two because it would be a bit difficult to reach the pencils that would be in the middle. But yeah, just be mindful of gravity. At a first glance, I feel like this is a nice color selection. There's not something that jumps out to me as being particularly weird or lacking, but I'll be able to tell more once I've swatched all of the colors. There doesn't seem to be any kind of swatching sheet with the set, but I was able to find one on their website and I tinkered with it just a little bit so I could print the swatches a bit bigger on two separate printer paper sheets. So the very first swatches I did were on printer paper. I'm fully aware that it's not the best paper for this, but also it's such a common surface and probably the one that I would draw on the most as a kid or, similar paper. So I feel like it's a good baseline to set from the start, and also it's going to be a very useful reference point for the color names and numbers. I decided to use the swatches in this particular way, meaning that I kept the first square for what I would call the mass tone. So that's technically me putting the maximum of pressure I'm able to on the pencil to get the color at the maximum strength. And then I'm trying to do a little bit of a gradient in the second square. With this paper, I noticed a little bit of, I'm going to call it dust because I don't think I have a better name for it, but it's basically when you put pressure on the lead and it kind of breaks a little bit and you have these little shards of the pencil's core on your paper. And if you're not careful and you smudge over that, it's going to leave color there. I hope that makes sense. So yeah, on the printer paper, which is very basic quality printer paper, there was a lot of that kind of dust happening. Also, it was the first usage of the pencils, and it was still the point that they were sharpened to in factory. I feel like it's quite common when you have a sharpened pencil of any kind that the first few times you use it, it kind of breaks a bit. But anyway, after the printer paper, I took a look at the papers that I had on hand to see what was available to me to do more swatches because I wanted to get a feel for how these pencils could look on different papers. I looked at quite a few artworks done by other people using this medium and looking at the kind of stroke they would get, the textures. That's what eventually got me to dig around and find some other papers. So I got black paper, black drawing paper, and tan drawing paper, and then I had a sketchbook moleskin around, which I know has some relatively smooth paper, and also some odd cardstock that is also very smooth. So these are my 4 test papers here. They're more artist grade paper. Printer paper, I feel it's not even anywhere on the scale, but these papers are at least somewhat intended to be able to handle artwork one way or another. The black paper was super interesting because it's the first one I did right after the printer paper, and it showed me that on an actually decent paper, the pencils work out so much better. This paper has a bit more tooth, it's a bit more thick, and you get the feeling that you can create more subtle gradients on it and that you can also control a bit more what you do with the pencil. I thought it was also quite interesting to see the colors over a black background because you can see how much they are visible or not on this very different surface. Then I moved on to the tan paper, which is from a Stillman and Burn Nova Series sketchbook. This one is a thinner paper than the black paper, but it has a similar texture on it, so the tooth of the paper is quite similar. It kind of makes for a more textured application, like it's a bit more grainy, and I feel like it might be harder to get fine details on a paper like this unless you really sharpen your pencil and use the sharp point to sort of flatten the texture of the paper while making your mark. It was interesting to see the colors on this type of paper, not only for the texture but also for the color, because unlike the black paper, which is like one of the extremes, you have the completely white paper, completely black paper. I feel like tan paper or gray paper is somewhere in between, and as such, some colors will really pop out on it, like all the lighter colors, you can see them a bit better on this tan paper than you would on white paper. But you can also see all of the mid-range colors a bit better. And in this way, the colored paper acts a bit like a mother color. It sort of unifies the whole palette because every color has a bit of that paper in it. You can see it really well with the neon colors in the way they kind of lose that brightness because of the paper. My third paper is the cardstock. It is 110-pound smooth solar white paper from Nina Paper. It is very, very smooth. The surface of this paper is akin to Bristol. I feel like on this kind of paper, it's a bit tougher to make a smooth gradient. Every little mark, every little difference in pressure is much more visible. However, I think it would be easier to do details on this kind of surface because it allows you a lot more precision with your application. It is a really nice feeling. I gotta say, while I was doing the swatches, I really enjoyed getting to this paper because it is just so smooth, and I felt like the pencils would generally glide over it really nicely. My last paper is a sheet that I took out from a sketchbook Moleskine. As far as I know, Moleskine has two kinds of plain paper books. You have one that is more of a notebook with plain paper, and the other one is the sketchbook that also has plain paper. Now, the sketchbook paper is a bit thicker, which is what I'm using for these swatches. It is also incredibly smooth, just like the cardstock was, but it has this light cream color instead of being white. It is not a paper color that is strong enough to make the lighter color stand out, so it behaves pretty much like white paper, but perhaps is a bit softer on the eyes. I'm not quite sure, but I thought it was really fun to swatch on this paper as well. And like for the cardstock, this being a smooth paper, it was more difficult to have a really smooth gradient. After doing all of these swatches, I felt like I understood a bit more how these coloring pencils work, and I was able to make a few observations. Overall, I feel like these pencils are quite smooth. I know they say they have a soft core, but compared to other pencils I've tried in the past, these are not like too soft, in my opinion. It's just a good level of softness, meaning that you don't fight with the pencil to get some color on the paper, but also it doesn't make a big mess, and you don't have to sharpen it every 30 seconds. Sometimes I felt as if there was a little hard grain of sand in the stroke that I was making. Now, I don't know if it's some sort of dust that my pencil picked up. I don't know if it's something in the lead. My only experience of something similar is with color erase pencils when I was studying animation, and there were a whole batch of them that would have these hard white plastic bits in the leads, and that was super annoying. But I cannot tell here if it's the same kind of situation or just something been stuck between the pencil and my paper, and I'm sort of dragging it along as I do my swatch. The swatches on all the good papers, I felt like they didn't do a lot of dust compared to the printer paper. Even the papers with a bit more texture to them, there was hardly any residue, any dust left when I was done with the swatches. I still use my special brush to remove all the possible dust from the swatches when I was done, but it was not as much of a concern for these papers. The next thing that I wanted to try out before really getting to an actual drawing was to do a few blending tests. I did the same blends on the 3 paper that I was going to do the drawing on. So I'm not including the black paper for this because it's a bit too much of a stretch to use for my current level at this medium. But I'm going to be trying out the cardstock, the Moleskine, and then the tan paper as well in the Stillman and Burn sketchbook. So I did my blending tests on those 3 using the same colors. I tried to do like the same gradients to see how it would work, and I think it worked out pretty well on all three of them. It worked well enough to my very beginner level standards, but I can't really see any issue wrong with these. I think it was fine. And I felt like after doing these, I was ready to try and do an actual little drawing on the papers. The colors blended out really well. I think it was somewhat of an effortless endeavor. I didn't struggle with any of the blending process, and you can sort of build it up gradually, and it worked out fine. After doing all of my tests of swatches and blending, I decided to try a very simple drawing on the three main paper that I have here. So that's the moleskin, the cardstock, and the tan paper. For subject, I picked a photo of an apple that I found on Pinterest, and I wanted to draw the same thing on the three paper just to get a feel for the pencils and the paper and not really focus on the reference. I made sure to write down the pencil numbers and to swatch them out on my sheet of paper. I think that's a really helpful habit to get into. And then I did a bit what I do with watercolor, meaning that I started from light and progressively build up intensity and the darks by layering the pencils. On some colored paper, you can add white back, but I feel like it's difficult to remove color, so I would rather be careful and build it up rather than have to try and find a way to remove some of it. I enjoyed having access to this range of color. It's quite vast, there's a lot of options, and I was able to find the colors that I wanted within this selection. They also blended and layered quite well, I think. I know that I'm new to this and I'm not attempting to do something very complex, but I truly did not encounter any wall while I was making these little drawings. They didn't make a lot of dust either, I think, because I'm building it up and I'm not putting so much pressure on the core of the pencil, the lead. It doesn't break as much, so I'm very happy with that. I hate colorful dust. I also did not notice a lot of smudging, and I went back to the paper and did a little test where I did a graded swatch of the black pencil, and then I tried to smudge it with my finger, and of course a little bit of it smudges, but really not that much, and that's with the darkest color. So I'm hopeful that I'll be able to use these in like a sketchbook and it won't become a big smudgy mess in there. Another thing that I noticed is that the core of the pencils, it held up really well. Like I did all the swatches and the tests and then my little drawings, and all in all only two pencils had to be sharpened. The white one, because I did that white background on the tan paper, and then the main red that I used for the apples. Aside from that, all the other pencils are still good to go. They still have some of the original point available, if that makes sense. I've tried some softer pencils and they would wear out really quickly, and they were also a bit harder to sharpen. So I feel like these are exactly the right balance of what I like in coloring pencils. Now, last little thing, I remember to do the blacklight test with these. On the cardstock, the white paper, it's a bit hard to see because the paper is just so bright that it makes everything glow. The neon colors still stand out a lot, but for everything else, it's very difficult to pinpoint if a color has a little bit of a neon dye in there or something. On the moleskin paper and the tan paper, it's a bit easier to see. Of course, the neon colors, they pick up, but also there are two colors that I felt had a little bit of a reaction to the black light or the UV light, but that's it. In conclusion, I really like these. I'm definitely eager to play more with these and to sketch out more things with these pencils. They're pretty much the best combination of all the characteristics that I like in coloring pencils, and they have very few of the issues I have with coloring pencils, so a very good match for me personally. I'm super happy with that. Right now, these are especially affordable because there's a Black Friday sale, but even at regular price, these are quite affordable still, especially compared to the other offerings out there. Their only issue perhaps is that you don't have access to open stock. So if you have a favorite color and you wear it out first, you can't easily replace it, and that's a bit annoying. That's the only thing though, and who knows, perhaps at some point there will be an option to buy these open stock. Fingers crossed. Thank you so much, Arrtx, for sending me these pencils to try out. I had a lot of fun and I'm very happy with them and I really like them, so thank you. And thank you guys for watching this video. Let me know if you have any thoughts, any insight. I like to read what you share in the comments, and also I would be curious to know which of the apples is your favorite. Have a lovely day. Again, thank you so much for watching and see you all in the next one. Bye bye.